Hello to everyone. Today we're starting our amazing show we do that we used to do before on this week and two times more called North Style. We will speak about some hip hop projects, hip hop education. And my name is Sergey Grandpa. I'm cultural activist, artist from Russia, Moscow. I'm doing also a lot of music, international projects, etc. And today I'm gonna present two amazing speakers, two amazing persons that gonna join us today on this live. First one, DJ Boo from United States, from New York, and he's amazing artist, musician, also doing a lot of social projects, cultural, artistic things. And I welcome you to say a few words about yourself, what you're doing, and maybe your road in hip hop. So, okay, let's start with you.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is DJ Boo. I'm from New York City. I'm a DJ. I've been DJing for a pretty long time now, about close to 30 years. Started off as a mix DJ and worked my way, learning how to scratch and do some mix tricking, trick mixing, and currently I'm about to go on tour with a show that I've been involved in, a holiday show called Hip Hop Nutcracker. So we kind of remixed Tchaikovsky's ballet. So instead of tutus and point shoes, we have sneaker like Adidas and tracksuits, and instead of Tchaikovsky's tracks, and I remixed some of those tracks as well.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'm gonna briefly represent our second speaker, Bobisch Lev. He's also a cultural activist, a dancer, amazing guy that helps us a lot with the internet connection, international projects, making his own now in Spain, but also started from St. Petersburg, Russia. So Bobisch, a little bit about yourself, please.
Hey, yes. Hi, everyone. My honor to be here. So great to see Boo again, online and offline. Always a pleasure. And you, Sergey, yes. As you mentioned, a lot of spheres, a lot of interesting stuff I do. Like if we talk about music, I also DJ, and currently I'm learning to play cajon. That is that Spanish drum. That is like cajon means a box, basically. Yes. So to make the long story short about music, that is the thing I'm currently into.
Amazing. Today's really nice communication, and we gonna speak a little bit more maybe about music today, because hip hop and music is the first thing comes to my mind when I see that word combination. Anyway, a few words more about our projects that we're focused on. North Style, why we call that North Style. I will repeat again because we've done that two times before. But anyway, one more time, we've been doing this year a great international projects with different small cities of Russia in the Russian north, engaging amazing practitioners and people on the spot, and making also a kind of these TV shows, video online with different artists from US, and making their online workshops. So DJ Boo also been participating in one near St. Petersburg in small village called Pladove, where we chance to go and to make an amazing event, attracting a lot of local people, a lot of local youth, kids, and making connection with the cultural center in that village. And to my mind, it was a great impact on the local community. We've been making also a kind of a festival nearby on the Ladoga Lake that we used to do a couple of years before. And I think it was very promising and good connection to make a hip hop and hip hop education event in this place, because this is considered to be like more faraway villages, more faraway places of Russia, where not so much happening frankly speaking. And I think it's very valuable when we bring different artists, different cultures, different values, different attitudes, especially in more free artistic education to the spots like that. And my question to DJ Boo, maybe we can start with that. What do you think about international connections and utilizing music, hip hop style and beats, DJing? And how do you consider it may helps to develop a small, tiny villages, faraway places, and to engage local communities maybe somehow? Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for me, like I grew up in New York City, through the '80s, and I never expected this music to go beyond the United States, and it's become this international phenomenon. So much so that the travels that I've been able to do, whether it's to Nepal or parts of Africa, parts of Europe, Russia, the this this culture, this music has proliferated itself everywhere to the point where it's almost like a universal language. No matter what, wherever I've gone, a lot of these young artists, these young people can really relate through this music, because a lot of the artists that are practicing the culture and practicing the music kind of are speaking at their level. You know, I've noticed, especially when I've never been to Senegal, origins of hip hop in Senegal, it sounds a lot like the origins here in New York, how it started in the Bronx, where it's a lot of disenfranchised youth trying to figure out a way to express themselves in a creative way, that's in a way that's not self-destructive. And they found this, um, whether it's through music, mostly from music that I've experienced when I've spoken to these artists. Most through music, they've been able to express themselves. So hip hop has become this, like, almost like, again, like this universal language that so much of us, so many of us, whether it's here in the States or overseas, have been able to, like, really relate to, it's become really truly an example of how so many of us are more alike than different.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer. I fully support your point of view regarding that universal usage of music, universal hip hop values, universal understanding what it brings. Yeah, and maybe going forward, so I will address the same question for Bobisch, as he used to do a lot of international projects, a lot of international connections, and more. He was that guy that was connecting us to that exact space in Pladova, in the Ladaga festival, and we used to do it together virtually. But anyway, what do you think about outcomes we've got this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Pladova, that settlement, that space, that spot, was originally important for a lot of people who visit, tourists and festival people who visit Ladaga Lake each year, because it is a trade hub. People buy a lot of food there when they go closer to the lake, or when they live at the lake on the shores, they come to Pladova to resupply, get the new supplies of food, gas, whatever. Yes, so being there every year for, I don't know, almost a decade of Ladaga life, for me it was kind of like cool to to think that one day it would be awesome to have an event in that city. And I remember sitting there in a barber shop with my crewmate B-Boy Galaxy. We were like, one day we want to have an event in Pladove, because we've been here so often, but we've never done anything culturally there. So in that sense, Sergey, you fulfilled our dream. Yes, and I was really happy that I was able to be present there, even online. Yes, and talking about music, hip hop music in particularly, and smaller places, the villages and the settlements, I think it has a lot of even practical meaning, because if a person in such a small place where wages are really low sometimes, unfortunately, if a person manages to create anything that he or she can promote, sell a beat, or maybe post a track, an MP3 to a blockchain platform, that maybe can even help to, sustain his or her family to some extent. Yes, because music can also provide some income to some extent. Yes, if people get lucky enough and they're persistent and consistent with that dream of making music.
Totally agree with you, because okay.
I'd like to add something. I mean, one thing about hip hop, it's so accessible. It's so accessible.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a like a a drum set, if you don't have instruments, whether it's beatboxing or beating on a table, or finding some kind of makeshift drum or what have you. It's so accessible, and which makes it that much more easy for people to express through.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll add, it's not only accessible in terms of technology, as Boo said, but also in terms of beliefs. Like, people could, if they feel that they represent their local culture, whatever it is, they may find local samples and produce music with that. So it's absolutely accessible in terms of any type of belief systems people may have, which is beautiful for nowadays world. Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree. But going back to the technology that it brings, it's also very important, because it lets you get acquainted with the new equipment, with the new stuff, with the new programs, etc. Maybe I will ask our technical manager just to show a couple of pictures from the spot, and there's very clearly seen how many things we have bringing with us. Some drum machines, keyboards you see over there with the laptop or tab, microphones, also some, here you clearly see some mixture also, and we've been utilizing everything during our workshop. It was the main idea, just to let very insightful for me to see how they handle with some unknown devices, and how they create and live everything. And you see, it was just a common people. We're not been gathering super hip hoppers, but it was like common kids coming to the event. But going forward, you, DJ Boo, started to talk about your experiments with Tchaikovsky and some classical, as I got it, Russian also styles,
right?
And Russian songs. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that background? How that idea comes to the producer or to you?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, the whole Hip Hop Nutcracker thing, it actually didn't start with me. It actually started with there's I live near a theater, and it's a theater / somewhat community center, and the rector of that theater wanted to create.
Okay, we're having a kind of a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Could wait a little bit, but
just let me know when I'm good.
I can hear you. I don't know, like, if it's overall not coming through. I can hear you.
Okay. Sergey's a little bit. Sergey's frozen though.
Maybe, yes. Maybe he's the only one who's frozen. Then
we just lost him.
Oh yeah. Then go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Just
Yeah,
okay.
continue your story. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a man named Mike Fitelson, and he runs this cultural center / theater called the United Palace up here where I live, up in Washington Heights. He wanted to create a holiday show that was inclusive to the neighborhood, and it tends to, like, when, for us at least here in the States, or at least in my perspective, when I think of the Nutcracker, I think of ballet, I think of the theater, I think of people dressing up in suits and getting all dolled up and like not exactly being able to afford to go to an event like that.
Yeah.
And it's usually downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike wanted to create a show that was inclusive, that involved the neighborhood, that involved Washington Heights. And his thought was, I'd like to do a new version of the Nutcracker, make it more contemporary, make it something that everyone could really take part in. And, and since hip hop is such a youth oriented, culture, like I want to remix it, like have the story take place in the neighborhood. So in actuality, like the show is called The Hip Hop Nutcracker, but the original name of the show was A Hip Hop Nutcracker in Washington Heights.
Mm-hmm.
So when at the time, I was working with a choreographer named Jennifer Weber, and Jennifer Weber started to build a reputation of she's a local choreographer who lived in Brooklyn, and she was building a reputation of pairing hip hop dance with classical music. And at the time, she had a small show that was being performed at the small theater way downtown. It was called Four, named after for the Four Seasons, for Vivaldi. So like she was pairing hip hop dance, she was choreographing hip hop movement with Vivaldi. Mike Fitelson caught wind of what she was doing, went down to see the show, and was just like, I need you for this project that I'm doing. At the time, Jen had she had a group, a dance troupe called Decadancetheatre. It was her own like hip hop dance crew, which she was using for the show. And I happened to be the DJ. I was the DJ for her shows. So she reached out to me and was like, this guy wants to do a hip hop Nutcracker and we need to remix some of the music. And I remember it was like, at the time we were moving very quickly. And she was just like, we need some music because we want to do like kind of like proof of concept, because Mike he needed funding. So he called like his financial people who would, try to find some people who would be willing to fund it, but they wanted to see a piece of the show. So I remixed, I don't remember which movement I remixed, but like I gave her a piece of, I remember it was a Friday, and she was like, I was like, we started talking about the music, about Hip Hop Nutcracker. I go, when do you need this? And she was like, by Monday. I'm like, so that weekend I think I just downloaded, like I went into iTunes and I downloaded like, I don't even remember which version of Hip Nutcracker I downloaded, but I was like, all right, I'm just gonna download this and I'll just listen to some of the music and I'll just figure something out. And like I remember I sent her just a draft. I was like, she's like, this will work. And they did like a small, like maybe, like a 5-minute like routine, showed it to some investors and they dug it. they decided to fund it. Jen happened to have a friend who was in the Broadway, kind of like in the Broadway world, and she saw the potential in the show, and she was like, you know what, this could be bigger than Washington Heights. This could be bigger than just a neighborhood. If you just cut Washington Heights out, this could be a hip hop nutcracker in Detroit, a hip hop nutcracker in Oakland. You know, if you just called it, you know, the hip hop nutcracker, this could be in every city. So they really pushed for it, and we were able to do a short tour that year. The following year, we actually went to Moscow. We did Moscow and Kaliningrad. But you know, the interesting thing was, it's like here in the United States, the moment you start hearing any part, you know, of the Nutcracker suite, you know the holiday is coming, and you'll hear the music from department stores. You know, Starbucks will play it to sell their coffee. So, you know, growing up, you're hammered with this music, and it becomes noise you know, so I never really listened to it critically, you know. So when I was involved with this project, you know, I was forced to sit and listen to this music, and it really opened my eyes, like how, like, not just, you know, to say it's beautiful is just kind of like a general thing. Like, yes, it's beautiful, but like, there's all these little like these little details inside the music, and so many influences, whether it's, you know, from Spain or from the Middle East. Like, there's all these influences in that music, and like, as you know, if you take that thought, you know, that thinking, and you put it in the mind of a, you know, a hip hop artist, it's like, that's kind of like what we do as well. You know, we take little pieces from, you know, from here, from there, and like, we make it this other thing, make it something that's our own, that we can use to express. So it was really, really just like, it was eye opening in a few ways, not just, you know, like, oh, this is the challenge, I'm gonna, you know, oh, this is a challenge for me to remix this music, but it was more of like, kind of almost like a kind of re-education of like who Tchaikovsky was, and what he did do, and why he's a big deal.
Yeah, amazing. I totally agree. And while you've been speaking about this amazing project, I've been reminiscing about you know, Russian experiments with hip hop that I recently faced too, and I remember two. So one was the poetry of the beat, something like that in Russian, poezia bita. So it was experiment of usage of the classical Russian poetry of the Silver Age, and making that in the rap style. And that was the huge project that was also very warmly taken by the crowd. And the second one was also more in Arfe and Evridika, taken from the ancient Greek, as I got it right. And it was also made with the rap music, with the DJing and dance at the same time. So when I think it's very alike with what you are doing actually, and maybe that's a kind of a trend, just where, you know, things alike, they jointing through the hip hop, through the music production, through the passion to show something deeper beyond, you know, the main surface of the pop culture. So maybe I will address this question also to Bobisch, as I know.
Can I just
okay.
So I mean, before I forget,
Mhm.
The story of the Nutcracker is told through ballet.
Mhm.
You know, so but our version tells it through like hip hop dance, and for me that's that's a big deal, because coming up, you know, in hip hop culture, when you think of, you know, especially when you think of b-boying, you think of battling, like two crews, two people like clashing.
Mm-hmm.
This, you're using windmills, you're using freezes, you're using, glides and popping a lock to tell a story. There's no words. They're telling a story through b-boying, rather than like, okay, I'm going to show you up. You're going to do a power move. I'm going to do an extra power move. It's more of like, there's a battle, but it's the battle between the Nutcracker and the Mouse King, or in our case, the Mouse Queen, and that's the only real battle that really happens. But for the most part, it's them telling the story of the Nutcracker, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I see also one thing that I have to sound regarding the global attitude, the hip hop culture in Russia, because sometimes it seems to me that it's still considered to be something closer to hooliganism, subculture, something not really attractable. And when we have shows like that, that brings it to the next stage, in the opinion of the state decision mind, some state body guys that are taking decisions about cultural events or pop shows. So it's very important to show them that this is very significant kind of the mixture. So this is new rethinking of the classics, but in very new language. Yeah, I think it's very important also for what we're doing, just to show the level of understanding what's happening. And
for lack of a better word, a better term, I mean, hip hop has been around long enough. I think that it could be considered high art.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean about high art and how it's considered to be now. What is the image of the high art now?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, Bobisch, maybe you can also say.
Yeah, I got also a couple of thoughts. Like when Boo told that they wanted to take that, kind of like luxury ballet theater feeling, they wanted to open it up to the neighborhood. That story speaks a lot to me, because if we look at ballet, with all the beauty it proposes, the process of, and there are numerous documentaries on this. Sometimes the process of children selection to that story, the process of their training, many times it's not too inclusive. It's like, they take the best people who are the best fit for this, the best people who are able to, to be, who can stretch well, who are flexible. And when you have that classic music coupled with breaking, which is absolutely accessible to anyone, that's a beautiful message, because in breaking, you're not flexible. Okay, go ahead, smash footworks, try to dance. It's accessible and inclusive. Everyone can join that. So to my mind, having those two together, that is in itself a beautiful message, that it is that classic culture is open to everyone as well, and you can rethink it and you can make it accessible. You can make it appealing to the neighborhoods, to anyone basically. So yeah, I love that message a lot in this story.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also reminiscence a good book by Tolstoy. The name is about art, об искусстве, and it was restricted. It was totally forbidden for a while in the Soviet Union, but a chance to get a volume, and it's very interesting that the same ideas was sounded by Tolstoy. It's very interesting. Yeah, but going forward, maybe we can talk a little bit more about Russian connection, about your trip, DJ Boo, to Russia, and maybe in comparison to the new online activities, because we all been faced with that new reality where we have more onlines than offlines, and we are a kind of restricted to have travel in person. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about your feelings of the process, feelings of the contact and communication.
Yeah. I mean, first off, like my trip for you guys wasn't my first trip. it was actually my second trip, and it was a little bit of culture shock in the sense of like being an American growing up through the '80s and through pretty much the Cold War. We had a I had a particular image of what I may encounter in in Russia, in Moscow, and it was it was very eye opening in the sense of like it was nothing what I expected. You know, it was nothing what I expected. Um, and but like as far as the acceptance of well, working in the theater was interesting because it was totally alien to them. Me bringing turntables into a theater, they kind of, I remember the techs they came in, they're kind of looking at me, and I was like, this is what I need. They know exactly what, what I, like it's not like I'm plugging in a violin or like, or what have you. Like, the turntables are on the stage, like literally downstage left. And they're kind of like gathered around the turntables. Like, what do you want us to do? I was like, I just need feeds into your speakers and we're good to go. Um, and it was very old school, but they were very accommodating. Um, and I think the response was great when we did the show. I was a little nervous because we're bringing our show, an American show that takes Tchaikovsky, that's very beloved, and kind of like doing this thing to it that may be sacrilegious for them, for the Russian people. But I think people really liked it. I think they really dug it. They were open minded to it. Um, my second trip when I worked with you guys um, was great. In the sense of like, again, you see how universal hip hop is. No matter what language someone is spitting, you could feel the passion in what they're saying. The beats, you could see how much they want to express themselves with, on the dance floor as b-boy. you know um, when I got a chance to like sit with some of the DJs, like just how, and again, like you mentioned, like the technology, like the fact that we can get on the internet, like me coming up again through the '80s and through the '90s, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have YouTube, so the way I had to figure certain things out was I had to hang out with people who were a lot better than me, or I had to find those people, you know, who were able to do those things. Like I had to like maybe videotapes. I was able to get a videotape here and there, but with the advent of the internet and especially um, like video channels at YouTube, like you see how quickly these people, a lot of these DJs, these turntablists pick up the art form and then start creating their own thing. Um, so that was a beautiful thing to see. That was really, really cool. And again, like I'm just so amazed by just how universal this culture has become, to the point where it's like you have these subcultures of the culture now, because all these cats are like doing their own thing and you know adding to their adding their flavor to the hip hop culture.
Yeah, I remember our last online that been with Mike Crenshaw. He was also accompanying us in that visit, as I remember, and he was telling very interesting phrase that I have also to write down, even to remember, that you have to develop. It's something like I'm interpreting, like you have to develop yourself. You have to be better in what you are doing because you love that. It's interesting for me. It's sounding amazing. So he was speaking about rap music, hip hop, that you have to be better and better every day, to develop yourself every day, because you are just having fun. You are doing what you love to do. And that is very, very important, I think, to keep that in mind.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I also touch on that trip that we had together when DJ Boo and Mike Crenshaw were in Moscow. A lot of the offline events we had, actually, there is a big difference between offline and online in terms of building trust. Because when you have offline events and you are as a crew, an international crew, we were Russian American crew, we were dealing with certain challenges on the ground, like, for example, going through a Moscow traffic jam together, making it on time to a venue, connecting the equipment, finding bathrooms, dealing with positivity or negativity of the people together in the audience. So all of that creates a lot of trust. And after such a week of doing an offline project together, usually, according to my experience, people become friends for life because they really
Yeah.
build some important trust. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen with online events that quickly because people need to somehow continue that relationship. Yes.
The experience is not there. As much as like I know your faces, I've met you guys before, but like if I didn't know you guys, this is just two dimensional. This is just it's just literally talking pictures. You know what I mean? It's like there's something about being in the room with that person, even if you don't like physically talk to them. When you're in the room, the combination of sight and sound and feeling the music, and whether like even just like you think of the heat emitted from the room because people are moving around, you know that all affects you in some way. um you know um I personally, like, especially during the pandemic, even in continuing now, it's like I don't loathe the online experience, but I somewhat roll my eyes at it. I'm kind of like, oh man, like I wish I could just be there and just like, I consider myself an introvert, but like at the same time, I know the importance of being offline to experience an event, and like I said, Bob, there's a bonding experience that's that you have offline that you can't duplicate online.
yeah, I definitely agree. Not long ago, we've been discussing about that, digital life, but that we were, in some sense, forced to go deeper in, and that our physical bodies and mind are not just, well trained to be so many hours looking at the screen. So we need that physical contact. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you, and that is very important thought. But in actual reality, I think that what we have, because for now, I think it's like the only one way that we can still on doing the international connection, and I think it's
Yeah.
very promising. And I hope in the closest future that if we have our borders open up, you're more than welcome to have another trip in Russia, and possibly we can go to the northern part of Russia, which I definitely love a lot. As a special place with the special ambience, with unique people over there, and maybe we can speak about it a little bit more. And I will address it also to Bobish. What do you think about northern specifics of Russian? So maybe some Nordic characters or Nordic styles, or because you're originally from St. Petersburg, and this is also considered to be northern part. Okay.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. And it speaks a lot to me because right now I'm currently almost 3 years. I'm based on Tenerife, and there is no winter in here. Well, there is no like northern winter. It's all the time pretty much 20, 25 Celsius in here. Yes, and I also had my exchange year in Texas, in Galveston, Texas, where there were also no snowy winter. And I would say that having that change of season that you experience there up north, in especially northern Russia, you start to value, maybe even you start to value moments of life a little more. It's like, in September, oh, this is the last day of summer, because after that it's going to be a lot of rain, 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 then the snow comes. So everyone is rushing to kind of like experience that swim of the last swim in an open lake of 2022 or something like that. And I think that's why a lot of people say that people who live up north there in Russia, they are kind of like soulful. They have open hearts. They're really welcoming. Because they have that sense of valuing time together, valuing that relationships, valuing the beauty of nature, and they know that it comes and goes. The trees, the plants, they lose the leaves, then something new comes. So in that sense, living, for example, here, you don't see the difference anymore because it's not too obvious. But then you start noticing that difference even in the local nature, because it also has seasons. So there is this need for the northern person, there is this need for the seasons. Yeah, so right now we had a couple of days of rain in here, and I was pretty happy to have that change. Yes. Yeah, so the change is important, yes, to appreciate more the difference.
Yeah, that's very, very, very soulful answer. Yeah, that's what I also would like to join with. And maybe we can speak a little bit more about mood, of the like northern mood or whatever. What do you think about that? Applying that to music, that we can speak a little bit more about that mood of the nature, if that can be traced in the mood of music you are making, if that influencing on your art. What do you think, DJ Boo?
I think it has an effect. When Bobisch was talking about the change in season, New York kind of goes through that as well. We have our seasons. There's actually a time where they even put it on the news where it's like, this is the perfect time to drive upstate to see the leaves change. So like areas like Seattle, like Washington, they say it rains a lot, so it really affects your mood. So I think, even here, like sometimes when it rains, people tend to not want to go out, so they're actually really kind of, or like for me at least, if I spend too much time indoors away from the sun, I don't feel right. For the past couple of days, my nephew's been on holiday. So yesterday I was like, we got to get out of here. We're going to go take a walk. I don't care where we go. You grab your scooter, we're going to get some sun. So I think, as much as everything in your life can influence you, I think nature, the seasons and nature can really affect the way you perceive the world. Even, which makes me think, I remember like there was this guy I ran into, who was like a friend of a friend, and he grew up in the city, and he finally experienced kind of like being out in nature, like being out in the woods and stuff like that. And he realized, I don't realize how much the city affected him, in the sense of like, there's nothing green around here. There's nothing green in my neighborhood. It's all concrete. And he's like, I think that's why I am the way I am. Like, I need to go see trees every once in a while. You know what I mean? And it's like, for me, I've been in neighborhoods where it's like that, where it's like, it's almost like a desert, where it's like all you see is just buildings. All you see is just concrete. There's very little. The foliage that you see are the weeds that grow from the sidewalk. And I think that could really affect the way how people see the world and how they interact with the world.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. From my perspective, I love to go outside in the woods and I feel that like I'm charging my battery
Yeah.
after 1 or 2 days. Yeah, I feel definitely better. And the second thing that coming to my mind, that I'm sleeping better on the outside, even on my countryside in the wooden house. It's like totally different feeling, and I feel more relaxed after that. Totally. Yeah,
And
but what
one
is
more thing about
okay?
the northern atmosphere changing the reality of hip hop culture and music. I would draw to the table this example of northern cities of Murmansk, Khibinogorsk, which is also called Kirovsk, where they actually during the winters they have black nights, the opposite of the
Mhm.
white nights, where basically you don't have sun at all. Yes, for some days, some months. Yes, and I remember visiting those places. MC rapper RG56, our great friend, shout out to him. He invited me to his hometown of Hibinogorsk, which is up north. And I remember noticing that this harsh climate, the harsh atmosphere of the outer reality, makes hip hop ciphers and hip hop life a lot more important, because this is like all the time during the day you are all cold, you have your coat, you got to be like, you're kind of like fighting against that harsh condition. And then when you're in the room and there are, five rappers out there, five b-boys, and everyone is throwing that fire that they were accumulating through the day, walking kind of like in their closed clothes and coats. So to me, it spoke a lot about the importance of hip hop in such places where for them, it's like, it's literally the fire that makes it a lot warmer in such places where the nature and the climate is so harsh. Yes. So big up to real hip hop up there in Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, Khibinogorsk. Awesome people. Yes. Anyone who wants to experience hip hop to its raw essence, really great place to see it there. Yes. Incredible communities. Much love to those places.
I mean, one thing I want to know, which is not on the subject of nature, but how hip hop creates these communities. The community building that hip hop does. Like, you find warmth in those communities.
Yeah, it's definitely intersecting of what I got from Bobisch brochure. I remember it was like about 10 years, almost 10 years ago. East North Side, your crew been issuing the whole brochure regarding the community, vocabulary, the style, the hip hop style, more, intrinsic, more local thing, but it's very important how you formulate. I remember it was right thing about what we're talking about, how we're ending one day as one family. I remember that phrase.
Exactly. Yes.
That's all about that feeling of unity, that feeling of
Warmth.
the warmth. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Right. And from the perspective of the nature, it's very interesting how local northern cities looks like. Because sometimes it looks like the abandoned Soviet factories, or a lot of destructive things around, full of graffiti, stuff like that, and it's very picture square. With the Nordic nature surrounding, like rocks, woods, and so on, with the white sea. And at the same time, we see, the hints from the big city, like graffiti or whatever. But it's very interesting connection with the old school Soviet stuff, almost destroyed, and with some new life upcoming there. And you, DJ Boo, started to talk a little bit about Cold War that you have image of when you first planned and started to go to Russia.
Right.
So what about now? Do you have that feeling, or it's completely different?
It's definitely different. It's definitely different. You know, again, like growing up in the '80s, like, and hearing stories of the bread lines, and you know, the people being very cold and stoic. Um, it definitely was not like that. Like everyone was very warm. Everyone we met was very warm and welcoming, and very they were just cool. Um, our hotel literally was like across the street from like this incredible like this food market. So like um, more Murray, Mike, and I would go there almost every chance we got, and like just you know gorge ourselves and like the food that they had over there. Um, and yeah, it was definitely, again, like that image. There was a part of me like knew that like we're not in the Cold War anymore, and this is modern times. But like again, growing up, you know, uh, pretty much growing up on the propaganda of the Cold War and what Russia, is what was promoted to us as Americans. Whether it's watching, the Sylvester Stallone movies, or watching, all the war, like the U.S. versus, Russia war movies. Like, it definitely was not what I expected, and I mean, and in a good way, in a really, really good way.
Yeah, great answer. So, Bobisch, maybe you can talk about it a little bit more also.
Well, I think that it should be better this time around. Yes, I hope it's gonna be better this time around, because like back then, if we imagine the contacts between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, they were not that many as there are today. Yes,
Right.
so nowadays a lot of people, they were connected for decades already. A lot of artists, cultural people, scientists, whoever. Yes, and just friends and families. They were traveling to one another, so they have that understanding of what's going on in the other country. They don't have those many stereotypes as they did. I would imagine they did back in the days, as Boo told. They had that perception of what it's going to be. And also we have the technology. That's also the big difference. So if we get to have the internet, then people may continue doing things together, collaborating, producing music together. Yes, you can
Yeah.
get on a online studio and do things together. Yes, teach breaking together, whatever. Yes, so in that sense, my expectation, I'll try to be optimistic. I think this time around it should be better. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with you. I want to reminding our viewers and listeners that we have the very last 5 minutes of our live show, and if you got some questions, so it's right time to address them. You can write down in the chat, I believe, in the YouTube or in the social media, so we can read them. So as we're moving to the ending of this session, maybe you have some questions to me that I wanted to address you. Um,
Yeah, I got a small question. Like being there on the site on the ground during that Plodove thing that you did when DJ Boo visited online. I translated online back then. Like you were on the ground. How did the local people react to your hip hop booth? Like the local seniors, the local youth. What was their reaction? Was everything pretty much positive, or were there some people that didn't understand what is this all about? What was your experience on the ground, talking to local people and their feedback?
Yeah, it's a very nice question that I wanted to share. I also been trying to even write down my experience, my emotions that I got from the series of that events that I definitely will do one day. and answering your question, yes, it was amazing experience. First of all, it was the main square of that small city. And when we put off the sound and we started with our workshop and a little concert, so we've been performing a couple of tracks together, playing beats, playing live music with instruments, and we have a rapper with us. And it was attracting people. It was something like bait for the youth. When they heard the sound, big speakers, okay, we have the whole crowd. That was it. And then we tried to attract them to be more involved in the, educative practices. We put everything on the tables, all our techniques like keyboards, like small drum machines, samplers, guitars, and we tell, it's your turn, guys. You can play with that. And it was thing that turned them on. And it was the whole play when they started to do that chaotically a little bit. It was a little bit of helter-skelter, a lot of sound, a lot of noise, a lot of voices and the microphones. And the sound engineer was approaching me at least about 10 minutes from that show start. And he told me, you got to finish with that. No way. That sounds awful. I can't stand. My ears will blow up. No way. And I told him, you got to hold on, man. That's the right moment. It have to happen someday. And and I thought that was the very epic moment when kids got the most experience out of that. And afterwards we've got lectures, we've got that connections, and we've got information from the first hands, like from you, Boo. And it was like a good also a promise and good information coming after the practice, because it was more about practice. I will be frank with you. It was more about having fun, practicing, trying something new, but it was very important also to have you and saying something from the respectful point of view. That was it.
Great, thanks for the answer. Yes.
I mean, I think what's great is like you kind of throw them in the deep end and you kind of let them see what happens. And when you mention the whole let them play, sometimes that's the best way of learning. Sometimes, like for me, when I get a piece of new equipment, I kind of have a general idea of like how it works, but like I kind of set the manual aside and literally play with a piece of gear and kind of like figure it out. And then when I have real like technical questions, I'll pick up the manual like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. That's what I'm doing wrong. But like to like literally play, like, I mean, and it makes me think about like, you doing that makes me think about like, some of the articles and the stories I've read about, hip hop production and how it came about. There would be MCs and the producers back in the day would go into like these professional studios, and the engineers was like, we would never do it that way. It was like, well, we do it that way and it works for us. Just try it. And as much as they don't want to do it, they're like, that worked. Or whether it was using a synthesizer or a drum machine or even like the basic sampler, they're like, yeah, this is insane. Why would you do that? He's like, yeah, just do this and then put it all together and you see what happens. And so it's really cool to hear that. You're like, yeah, you had to tell the engineers that, just let them do their thing, give them some time, and like, something will come of this. I really like that.
Yeah, appreciate. I think that's all about hip hop education and each one teach one concept. Yeah, that's very promising and important thing. Yeah, I'm seeing that we have almost finishing our live show. The time is coming up, and maybe I would ask you to say like final words from each of you, Bobisch and DJ Boo, for the youth also, maybe your wishes. What do you want them to know, or what do you
Yeah,
want to address?
I always tell to people that I'm repetitive with that. I'm telling everyone that it's really important to be as long as possible in the hip hop game, because some people, they come in, they spend a year inside the culture, and then they're like, okay, I've seen everything. Well, even with a lot of people spending decades in the culture, a lot of people say, I'm just starting to discover, my third eye starts to open. Now I see this, I see that. Yes. So to all the people out there who are beginning with the culture, I would tell them that the goal is to, to stay in it as long as possible. Then the wonders, the beauty, the gems of the culture, they'll start opening to you slowly but surely. Yes. So stay in the game. That's my short message.
Yeah, good. Appreciate. And you,
To,
DJ Boo?
to build off of what Bobic is talking about is, uh, I study martial arts, right? So a lot of my teachers say, once you get your black belt, that's when you start learning. That's when you really start learning. When you learn all your techniques, and you're like, oh, that's why I do this, and because I do this, I could do this, that, and the other. I mean, for me, it's like, again, building off of this, it's like, know your history, know where it came from. Um, in the States, there's a, there's been a little bit of a, the I feel I think there's a greater appreciation now in the States, but for a long time, hip hop culture was not appreciated. Like, we talk about, we mentioned it earlier, how hip hop can be, it's been long enough that it can be considered high art. Whether like you look at, when you watch, I personally, because I've worked with dancers now for for a decade, I'm no longer the spectator. I've seen dancers, and I have dancers as friends. It's like, they're athletes. They have to put their bodies through rigorous training to get to a certain point. You know, as DJs, like, I've had musicians, like, I kind of just warming up, and musicians come up to me like, how the hell do you do that? You know what I mean? And it's practice. It's like taking your hobby and creating it into a high art. I mean, again, it's like, if it's a trend for you, if you're doing this for a trend, like, dig a little deeper. This is a culture. This is not just this is not just a fad. Hip hop is going to be here for a long time. It's it's helped a lot of people. It's helped a lot of people. It's been a form of expression. It has its own language. It has its own movement. It has its own fashion statements. Um, enjoy it, and you could learn so much from it, and learn to enjoy it at the same time. So again, it's a culture. Have fun with it. But at the same time, respect it as a culture.
Yeah, very, very nice words. Very good ending. So I appreciate for you to joining us today. Thank you, everybody watching us. And I saying one more time that we have the whole series of these events. The next one will be like in a day on the September 29 with the another amazing artists. We're gonna, yeah, insightful talks. Thank you guys for watching us, and again, see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having me.
much. One love. Peace, everyone. Yes.
Yeah,
Until
peace.
soon.